although the title indicates that it is more relevant for software and IT industry, but actually the methodology can be utilized in any of the industries, in manufacturing or even in any consultancy or construction or whatever you call it, because this is not really about anything about IT. Actually, it is about the project management, and that's why it is mentioned in the title that it is Agile Project Management using Scrum methodology. Okay, so let me start with giving you the basically first. Let us see that why actually we need all this. What was the problem that we need to look at different project management techniques and all. So the examples here are from the IT industry, but then similar problems are faced by any other industry also, that when the project starts, the requirements are not clear initially, frequent changes are there in between, the problems come up during that, and then the team starts fixing the problems. In software we call it bug finding and fixing. Then the scope will keep on changing, because as the project progresses, other new requirements come to be known, and then the new requirements get started and included in the project. The stabilization of the project takes too long, releases take too long, and then changes are hard to make eventually towards the end, quality starts falling, and eventually there are cost and schedule overruns, and we start losing face in front of the customer. So these are the problems because of which in software especially, and in any other industry also, we want to have project management techniques and methods so that we can predict that exactly what timeline it will take, when it will be completed, when we can hand it over to the customer, and things like that. So to untangle this web of problems, various methods have been tried out in the past, and if you look at it, in this slide I have tried to show various methods that have been used in software over the period of time. There is ISO 9000, there are spiral methods, CMI, Six Sigma, Agile modeling, waterfall, lean, and Scrum and all. But one thing that we'll note is that Scrum has been most popular of late, and this data is basically from first research collected in December 2008. So what is this Scrum about? Let us get into the detail. Let us try to understand what Scrum is all about and see how we can use it in our respective fields. The origin of Scrum actually is not from software industry as such, but it was actually, there were various other industries also facing similar problems, and they came out with the various techniques to deal with the situation. Problems, as I said, were same in different industries. They were missing the timelines, product quality was not that good, and in the market they were losing share and all. So there was a study conducted by Hirotaka and Nanaka, which they published in the Harvard Business Review in January-February 1986, and the paper that was published was titled "The New Product Development Game." In this paper, actually, you can download this paper from the net. In this paper, actually, they have tried to investigate various types of methods and technologies and techniques and tools being used by the various industries for developing new products and delivering them in the market. And they found that the problem with most of the techniques was that the development was in a sequential manner. As a result, the timeline would get extended, things will come up at the last leg and they will not get addressed, and things like that, because components or parts of the project would get delivered, would get developed sequentially, and as new parts got developed, they would impinge upon the earlier developed parts, and then they would have to fix the impact of each other towards the end. So they looked at it, and then they suggested that there could be a method where one could start in parallel on independent parts, and so that all parts and components get developed in parallel, and towards the end they meet and they can then be joined together or integrated. So this is what they came out in this paper. The emphasis on this was on the speed and flexibility, as go to the market strategy required that, I mean, as product got developed, they reach the market as the demand was developing, not afterwards. And the traditional sequential layer or sequential method of relaying approach was not really meeting that. So they suggested that what they call actually the rugby approach, and that is where from this name Scrum has been taken. So in rugby, what happens that all the players are coming together and trying to take the ownership of the ball, and it has been, the process has been somehow compared with that, akin to that, and has been given the name Scrum. In context of software, Ken Schauber was one of the leading person who started practicing it. He came out with his own research paper, which he presented in the Uppsala 1996 conference, and also published in the American Programmer under the title Control Chaos Living on the Edge, in which he defined the Scrum process in more detail. He said that the Scrum software development process is basically an iterative incremental approach. So those are the key words actually. We must understand that iterative and incremental approach. And interaction with the environment, that is technology, computer, and user is allowed, which will change the project scope, technology, etc. And the Scrum accepts that the development process is unpredictable, and therefore the product is best possible sector only after if you give the flexibility to the team so that they can look at it from all aspects and come out with the best possible solution for that. There were other experts also working on this. Another prominent name which was initially in this and is still active is Jeff Sutherland. He has also worked, he independently worked, and eventually Ken Schauber and Jeff Sutherland came together and they formed the Scrum Alliance, which has been providing training to the people for Scrum practice. And actually at the back of it, if we look at the history of the industry, on one hand, as I said, there was best practices coming from the other manufacturing industries, and at the same time within the software industry, this agile movement was going on. And if you look at the deeper aspects of this Scrum process, we'll find that actually the roots are in this case also basically on the Agile Manifesto. And I have just for reference given here the Agile Manifesto. Actually, if you want to understand what exactly is given, you have to focus on the 4 points which are at the middle of this: transparency, individual and interaction over processes and tools. This is what is considered important. Working software is more important than comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration is more important than negotiations. And responding to change is more important than following the plan. So idea was basically that in Agile, the focus was basically to deliver what is actually required instead of getting tangled with the processes involved in that, the artifacts required for that, and things like that. So if we study the Agile Manifesto and the corresponding 12 principles of Agile, we will see that most of them are used in this Scrum methodology. Anyway, we don't have to get confused with that, because as I said, I am also talking to people who are not from software exactly. So it doesn't matter if you are not aware, if you do not know about the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles of that. So let us proceed with the Scrum. So what is Scrum? Scrum is simple. Actually, Scrum is basically a loosely defined framework for processes and activities, and the rules and practice of Scrum are very few and straightforward. So basically, it actually doesn't prescribe anything. It basically gives boundaries that, okay, you have, these are the roles, these are the basic rules for guiding principles for those roles, and this is how the process should be. Actually, the processes get involved eventually in every organization, and everybody comes up with their best practice that they find is best for them. But however, you will see that actually, and if you talk to the people who have been practicing Scrum, they will say that Scrum is hard at the same time. Hard because again, because lack of those details in the framework. It doesn't have things specified like in the project plans or the Gantt charts or specific tasks or the assignment for people and things like that. So let us see, I mean, how it works actually, because I mean, in this situation, generally when we talk about project management, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is that, okay, there will be a plan, there will be tasks, there will be people or team working on that project, and everybody will be, there will be perhaps a manager, project manager, or somebody who will be with authority, who will be assigning the task to everybody, monitoring, controlling them, and ensuring that it gets delivered in time. But actually, in case of Scrum, it is not so. So what happens in Scrum? Let us see. Essence of Scrum is that the whole focus in case of Scrum is on the team. That the team makes a commitment to achieve a goal. That is the basic fundamental principle of the Scrum. That as a team, people come together and make a commitment, and then they live up to that commitment, deliver that commitment. That is the basic essence of the Scrum. Now, the team, for doing that, the team organizes itself for meeting that commitment. Team decides that, okay, what commitment has to be made. Team decides that what kind of timeline is required for doing that. And team decides that how it is to be achieved, how it is to be delivered. And this, the teams, at the same time, the team's activities, the team's progress, the team's problems, they all remain visible to outsiders, like basically stakeholders who have interest in that project. So team remains transparent to all of them. And team visibly and otherwise also directly communicates to them about the progress being made or impediments being faced by it, or whether they are will be able to fulfill the commitment or not, what are the problems and issues that they are facing, and things like that. So basically the whole way of working is based upon the values of commitment, team spirit, self-respect, respect for others, trust and courage. So these are the, if you look at it, these are basically the, I would say that these are individuals' traits basically, and team capitalizes on those traits to ensure to ensure that as a team they maximize those traits and deliver on their commitment. As I mentioned, Scrum does not instruct teams how to do their work, but it expects that they will do all necessary, best possible effort to fulfill the commitment. So that is the basically essence of the Scrum. Now, what is the team here when we are talking about it? Is basically mainly it is the people involved who are going to put in the effort to achieve the goal, but they are supported by two other roles. One is the Scrum Master and other is the Product Owner. Now, everybody who is part of this team, that means the Scrum Master, the Product Owner, and the team members, they are all directly involved, committed for the success of the Scrum, success of the project, and these are, I mean, colloquially I should say, these are known as PICs, and they decide how to do their work, how to deliver on their promise, on their commitment. And all of the stakeholders who are interested in that work are called chickens. And this chicken and pig nomenclature comes from the story that I had mentioned here, that a chicken and a pig were together when the chicken said that let's start a restaurant. And the pig thinks it over and says, what would we call this restaurant? Chicken says ham and eggs. And then the pig says, no thanks, I would be committed, but you would only be involved. So basically chickens are only involved in the project, whereas the pigs are the ones who are actually committed for the project or the success of the system. So let us look at these team roles little in detail and try to understand what exactly they are trying to do. First of all, let us look at the product owner. Now, product owner, as the name suggests, is basically the person who basically owns the final outcome of the project. So he is basically, in the simpler terms, you can say that he is the representative of the people or the stakeholders who are funding it, who are interested in getting it, or even further simpler terms, we can call them, he is basically or she is basically the representative of the customer. So product owner is basically represents the interest of everyone in the stake in the project, but principally the customer's interest, who is going to be deliver the outcome or the result of the whole Scrum or the project. Now this product owner comes out with all the requirements, like in case of normal transaction, the customer basically spells out what he or she exactly wants, and then the supplier will try to develop and deliver those things. So in this case, being a representative of the customer, product owner basically comes out with the project's initial overall requirements, and keeping in mind the return on investment or the objectives of the project, he also makes a release plan. We will talk about that a little further down. So product owner is basically playing the role who is going to give the requirement to the team, who is going to tell what all is required to be done, and in what sequence he needs it. The list of requirement is called product backlog. So what the product owner is basically doing, he's listing out all the requirements, and this list is called product backlog. Now this product backlog actually has a special characteristic, and that is that the product backlog ensures that most valuable functionality or most valuable requirement is put at the serial number 1 or at the top of the list. So basically what the product owner is doing, he is listing out the requirements in the order of their importance, in the order of their valuability, in order of priority, whatever you can say. In doing this, the responsibility of the product owners are that he or she works on a shared vision with the stakeholders, basically, because he is representing all the stakeholders. He's coming out with the requirement which all the stakeholders have in mind, which they have thought out. And so he gathers the requirements from all of them. He manages and prioritizes the product backlog. Actually, this prioritizing is now being revised as ordered, because priority could be misleading at times. So the new nomenclature for this characteristic of product backlog is ordered list of the requirements. And because he is the one or she is the one who is coming out with this requirement, he or she also has the responsibility of eventually accepting the delivery at the end of each iteration. We'll talk about this iteration further. Actually, iteration is, in case of Scrum, we call these iterations as sprints. And the product owner also manages the release plan. Now, what happens that in product backlog, it will be a long list of requirements. It could be very long also. So product owner basically prioritizes that list or orders that list into chunks of requirements which get delivered one after the other. So depending on the value, depending on their interdependence, depending on their priority, he prepares a release plan that, okay, so many these requirements will come in the first release, these requirements will come in the second release, third release, like that. And he ensures that the profitability of the project is there, because he is representing the all the stakeholders. So his first and foremost duty is that to ensure that the stakeholders get benefited out of it. Okay, so that is about the product owners, and then we talk about the team. Now, team is basically number of participants who come together to work, make the commitment, and make delivery on that commitment. This team is responsible, has the collective responsibility for the success of each iteration and of the whole project overall. This team is basically, because this team, the success of the team depends on the team spirit. As I mentioned earlier, there are certain things which are required from this team. They have to have trust among themselves. They have to have commitment, share the commitment with each other. So this team size is also very important. The team, typically it is recommended that the team size could be 6 to 9, 5 to 7 or something like that, because if the team size becomes too big, it becomes difficult to make them work in a united manner. More the number of people, more diversity of thought and action would be there, and there will be less chances of their being very cohesive and committed together. So that is the team size typically recommended. These teams are, as I also mentioned earlier in the earlier slide, are supposed to be self-managing, self-organizing, cross-functional, and responsible for figuring out how the work is to be done. Now, cross-functional factor is very important for these teams, because ideally these teams should be self-sufficient for completing the tasks, because in case they are not self-sufficient and they depend too much on the external help or support or inputs, it will be very difficult for them to make commitment. It will be very difficult for them to meet that commitment. So the effort is always made to make this team to the extent possible self-sufficient, so that they do not need much help from other people. The other important factor is that the team, within the team, the members are not identified by their role, task, or anything. It is expected, it is supposed that the team will work as a single unit, and so internally they could swap their roles, they could help each other, they could take up each other's tasks. So externally they behave as a single unit. The responsibility of the team and team members are estimating size of backlog items, actually, because now the moment they commit on any of the backlog item, they'll have to estimate the size of it, estimate that what all, detail out the tasks that are required to be done for completing that. And for that, on that basis, then they commit on the increment of deliverable software, that is what is going to be done in any of the iterations, any of the sprints. They also have to track their own progress to ensure that they are able to meet the commitment, and they have to be self-managed but accountable to product owner, because they are making the commitment to the product owner. So they have to be accountable to the product owner. Now these teams, as I said, I mean, ideally size being around 7 people in that, they would have different kind of roles. They would have different people with different background, different expertise and all. So it is thought that it would be good if they could be given somebody who could help them stay together, help them keep sync amongst themselves and all. And this person is called the Scrum Master. Now, Scrum Master is responsible for the whole process to be followed. He teaches or he evangelizes the practices required for Scrum in the team. He ensures that the team implements the Scrum practices, and those practices are in line with whatever organization's culture or organization's practices are there, and ensure that the team delivers the expected benefit out of it. So this person has a kind of patron kind of role for the team. He keeps an eye on everybody's activity. He brings them together, ensures that the team remains cohesive. Ensures the team is making the right kind of progress at right pace, and things like that. Interestingly, it must be noted here that the Scrum Master is not part of the team. Part of the team in the sense that the Scrum Master is not part of the team's commitment. Scrum Master is not making commitment. Team makes the commitment. So Scrum Master provides all inputs, all guidance, all support to the team so that they make the right kind of commitment and they are able to meet that commitment. The responsibilities of the Scrum Master role are that it empowers and shepherd the team. Shepherding the team in the sense that she also ensures that the team doesn't get distracted from its target. Any of the team member is not pulled out of the team in between. The team is not disturbed in between because of any of the external factors and things like that. Scrum Master is also there to remove the impediments. In case team comes across any impediment, The Scrum Master tries to help and remove that impediment so that the team can make the progress. Keeping the progress moving, that is also a Scrum Master's responsibility to ensure that team is making right kind of progress at right pace from day-to-day basis during any of the iterations. And Scrum Master basically institutionalizes the Scrum practices in the larger organization. So if I sum up the role of a Scrum Master in brief, we can say that a Scrum Master is a friend, philosopher, and guide for a team. Please note that Scrum Master is not playing the role of project manager or manager of the team. The Scrum Master doesn't have any authority on the team. The Scrum Master is just helping them. The Scrum Master is there to provide them support. The Scrum Master is there to help the team meet the commitment in whatever way possible. Okay? So now let us come back to the project backlog, how the team is going to, this team starts working. So first thing that team comes across is the product backlog. A project starts with a vision of the system to be developed. This vision is given by the product owner. So basically product owner will come up with the idea that, okay, this is what is required. It could be one of the stakeholders' requirement. It could be joint requirement of the stakeholders. Say, for example, in case of a product development company, it could be management's decision that, okay, we need to develop this kind of product or this kind of extension to the product. So he or she comes up with that vision, and then the product owner enhances that vision, works out the detail by discussing with all the stakeholders, collecting their views, ideas in the form of requirements, and formulates a plan for that, okay, how these requirements would be delivered, which is in software what known as release plan, how many releases will be there in each release, with all requirements will be delivered, and lists all of them out, all of those requirements out as a product backlog. So the product backlog is a list of requirements that will deliver the vision. It is prioritized so that the item most likely to generate value are on the top, as I mentioned earlier also. And prioritized or ordered product backlog is the starting point for the release, making the release plan, which is, and the changes in this product backlog, because as the teams start delivering the requirements from the top towards bottom, this product backlog will keep on changing, and that change in product backlog will indicate that how fast or how slowly the team is able to deliver, whether the release plans are going to be in time, whether all releases will be in time, whether the schedule will be met, and things like that. So once the product backlog is there, that actually the product owner presents that product backlog, prioritized product backlog, to that sprint team. And by the way, these requirements in the product backlog are also known as stories. So product owner comes up with a list of stories, most important, most value generating story being on the top, and he presents that list of stories, prioritized list of stories, and team starts looking at that list from top to bottom. And team tries to decide that in a given iteration or in a given time box, how many of these stories can be delivered. And mind you that these stories have to be picked up in the same order. It is not possible that teams start picking something from the top, something from the middle, and something from the bottom. No, that is not allowed. Team has to start picking from the top sequentially and see to it that how many stories they can deliver in the next iteration. Now these iteration, or as I said, we call them sprints, are typically 2 to 4 weeks long. The minimum time that a sprint should be, ideally it should not be less than 2 weeks, and it should also not be very long, because longer the sprint, lesser the visibility into the progress is there. So ideally the sprint size is recommended for 2 to 4 weeks time. So what the team is doing, team is trying to look at the backlog, understand that backlog by discussing with the product owner, and once they understand those stories, they estimate that how much time this story will take, and depending on that time and effort estimation, they decide that okay, in next sprint how many stories they can commit. And that's how the team commits to the product owner that how much of whatever is desired can be delivered over the next sprint. Now, this sprint planning meeting cannot last very long. It has to be quick. It is also time boxed. In fact, every activity in Scrum is time boxed. So you decide, say for example, you are deciding that this is the sprint length. Total sprint is maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So in case it is 2 week long sprint, you can't spend 2 or 3 days on just deciding that what the stories to commit for. So proportionate to that time, the team has to decide, make a decision and estimate the time and effort required to do that. Based on that commitment, team now develops the sprint backlog. So sprint backlog is akin to product backlog, but it is talking here, we are talking only about what is required to be done during that sprint. So this sprint backlog, sprint planning has basically 2 parts in which the sprint backlog is generated. In the first part, it looks at, as I said earlier, it looks at the prioritized list of the product backlog stories and commits about the stories that they would be delivering. Now this commitment incidentally is for something which is shippable, which is complete in itself, which can be delivered to the customer. Not something which has been developed or which requires further testing, for the integration and things like that. Sorry, I was just looking at some of the questions that have come in between. So I think I'll elaborate on those questions towards the end once let me finish, because some of them I've already passed through. One of the questions which has been repeated by a number of people, it says that can we say Scrum Master is like a line manager in a standard process? No, that is not so. As I made it clear while discussing about the Scrum Master's responsibility, role and responsibility. I said he doesn't have any authority over the team. So he's not a manager. I specifically mentioned that he's not a manager. He's friend, philosopher, and guide. He's there to facilitate team's work. He's there to remove the impediments, but he cannot order, he cannot direct, he cannot manage the team, because team has to be self-managing. Team has to decide for itself what exactly they want to do and how they want to deliver it. So we will talk about some other activities as we progress about this sprint discussion. So as I said, basically once the commitment has been made about the stories, then the team has to decide or to detail out the tasks involved, tasks required to be performed to make that delivery happen. And for that purpose, they again have to break down those stories into finite tasks and again estimate that what each task, what kind of time and effort will be required for each task. And again, this estimation has to be done very fast. I mean, one of the techniques that is recommended for these kind of estimations, whether it is for the product backlog commitment or for the sprint planning, is the planning poker. Typically, numbers from Fibonacci series are taken, and based on that, gross estimation is done. And that estimation is refined by consensus of each of the team members, and then on that basis, the team proceeds further. So, team details out all the tasks, and based on that, they create the sprint backlog that these are the tasks that needs to be done during the sprint, so that they are able to finish and deliver the commitment. The sprint, as I said, is time box, and the sprint, by the way, sprint time box starts right from the moment team sits with the product owner and starts deciding, making the commitment. Okay, so again, depending on the time length of the sprint and kind of commitment being made and the stories being discussed, team has to keep in mind that how big this time block should be for creating a sprint backlog. Once the sprint backlog is created, okay, another question has come that how is cost factor in, since in the previous slide you had mentioned the actually cost factor is look at it from a different perspective. The product owner is supposed to be ensuring the return on the investment, as I mentioned earlier. So product owner has already decided that how many releases in what time frame the whole delivery is expected, and based on that he creates the release plan. This release plan of course does get modified, and that we'll see as we go forward, because I have to introduce other concepts for doing that. So this release plan basically dictates that, okay, whether the sprint or the delivery is being made in the given time frame, which implies that within the specified cost limits. Okay. So let us look at the sprint further, that how the sprint is working. So is the time of the sprint, once it is created, then this is team commits to starts working on this, and then team can seek outside advice, help, information, whatever is required to fulfill that, because Scrum Master is there to help them. But ideally, as I said initially, that teams are supposed to be self-sufficient, so they start on that. The tasks are allocated to different people, or actually not allocated, because again it is a cooperative kind of effort, because there is no manager, there is nobody who is going to assign. So team members pick up the tasks that are detailed out and volunteer for that, and they start acting on that. And in this tasks pickup or task allocation, again, I mean, it is not necessary that somebody's background or knowledge or experience, of course he takes care, but nobody is going to tell that, okay, you are so and so, so why don't you do this or that. So it is all voluntary basis. Team, as I said, it works as a single entity, and so everybody tries to do his or her best, and so they pick up all the tasks and ensure that they get delivered within the given time. So now these tasks will have the interdependencies. That means the team will have to keep in touch, everybody informing the team about the progress that any individual is making. So this kind of activity is monitored by or facilitated by the Scrum Master, and this is how the team progresses. We'll talk about it in more detail, but before that, there could be situations where the team finds that the commitment made has been, later on they find that the commitment has been too much and perhaps it cannot be met, or it is also possible that because of certain lack of specialization or knowledge or information beforehand, team has made the commitment, but eventually they find that they cannot really fulfill that commitment. So in either of the situation, they have to get back to the product owner, and with the discussion, with consensus with the product owner, they can resize the commitment. They can say that, okay, out of these 5 stories committed, perhaps only 4 can be delivered, and this and 5th story will have to wait for some time for whatever reason. The Scrum Master can also terminate the sprint in case he finds that the team is not able to meet the commitment. So instead of wasting time, instead of procrastinating over the whole issue and things like that, the Scrum Master can suggest that the team, and they can terminate the sprint and start a new sprint all over again. So these are the provisions that can be worked upon, and team members during this sprint, they have the moral responsibility or administrative responsibility I mentioned here, is that they have to attend the daily Scrum meeting and keep the sprint backlog updated. Now, what is it that they are supposed to do? I have tried to explain it through this picture. On the left-hand side, you see that the sprint backlog is listed, where the product backlog is listed, out of which sprint backlog is created, of the part of the product backlog. and that is detailed out into number of tasks. And then here it is showing that the 30 days sprint is there. So in that 30-day sprint, actually, team is supposed to do a daily Scrum meeting, which is shown on the top as 24 hours. So this daily daily Scrum meeting is actually a daily stand-up meeting. I'll tell you about that, what exactly is supposed to be done there. And then at the end of 30 days, the team delivers the potentially shippable product requirement. Now, what is this daily Scrum all about? Daily Scrum is the important ritual of Scrum, the important activity of the Scrum, which, as I said earlier, because different people are doing different tasks, nobody is really assigning them, everybody is picking it up independently. So the daily Scrum helps in keeping the team in sync. There are certain guidelines here which are mentioned here, that it is ideally this should be conducted at the beginning of the day, and so that the team member can think of what exactly they have to do during the day. The team members, this meeting is supposed to be very, very short, and to keep it short and sweet, each team member is actually supposed to answer only for 3 questions. Number 1, what has been done since last stand-up, that means in last day, and what will be done next now, and is there any impediment, is there any problem, is there any obstacle being faced by the team member. So just by answering these 3 questions, basically what is happening, that each team member is informing others that this such and such task has been completed, this is the next task I am going to take up, so that if other members have any dependencies on those tasks, they can tell, or they can suggest that, okay, you have picked up these 4 tasks, why not you do the next one first, because my task is going to be dependent on that. So that kind of moderation can be done by the team amongst themselves. The Scrum Master is responsible for removing whatever obstacles, whatever impediments the team reports, so that the team is able to make the progress. The Scrum Master also ensures that during this stand-up or the daily Scrum, everybody gives their status quickly. In fact, it is recommended that nobody should be speaking more than 15 seconds, 30 seconds. So minimum time they should be taking. The whole stand-up should not last too long. In this stand-up, chickens can participate. That means any other person from outside the team can also participate, can attend, but they cannot comment. They cannot interfere in the meeting. They cannot give direction. They cannot make suggestions and all. They can just listen to the updates. And the technique that is used for keeping the team in sync is actually what is known as the task board. I have just given a picture here. So what is happening, if you look at the left-hand side, all the stories are there. I mean, here 2 stories are seen, and depending on those 2 stories which came from the product backlog, you have in the next column to-do list. To-do list has all the tasks required to complete that story. And then from to-do list, the person who picks up those tasks, he picks up these are the stickies actually, he'll pick up 1 sticky and put it in the in process column. So which will tell everybody that, okay, this task is under progress as of now. And then it will move to the next column once it is done for the verification, and finally to what's done. So as the sprint progresses, the sprint backlog, which is basically in the to-do column, keeps moving towards the right-hand side in the done column. So this is also a very good visual practice, so that everybody remains informed, not only the team member, even the other stakeholders are abreast with the team's progress. Once the team has done all the tasks, so that means they are ready for they have completed the story, the delivery is ready, which is potentially shippable. Now the question comes that who is going to and how it is going to be accepted. So what I didn't mention earlier is that actually the product backlog, which has all the requirements, basically has stories in it, but with each story is not supposed to be complete without the acceptance criteria which is associated with the story. So product owner also gives the acceptance criteria for each story or for each requirement, that okay, if this requirement, you fulfill this requirement, it should be meeting these. criteria. So now the time comes that team has to prove that, okay, whatever they have done, it meets all the acceptance criteria. And for that purpose, the sprint review meeting is conducted. The sprint review meeting is again a time box activity in which team demonstrates that whatever has been done is meeting the acceptance criteria. This sprint review meeting is open for everybody, but basically the product owner has the onus of critically examining and accepting the stories if they are completed. So the criteria that is associated with each of the story is in brief called done criteria. So the product owner will basically see that all the stories are meeting the done criteria. For this for this demo of the stories, focus is basically, as I mentioned in the very beginning, focus is on the working software or basically on shippable delivery, which can be given to the customer, end customer. So they are not really bothered about any other artifact, any other processes involved, any other related things. So main focus is whether whatever has been completed, it can be shipped, it can be handed over to the end customer. The sprint review starts with presentation of sprint goals and product backlog, just giving the idea that what all was attempted, and finally presenting what got done. Only those stories are demoed which are done. If something is not done, it cannot be presented in the review meeting. All the stakeholders are there. They will generally look at it. They are free to comment here. They are free to give their opinion. And at times it has so happens that based on their comments and criteria, looking at the finished story, the new requirements will come up or additional requirements will come up which are related to that already delivered thing. Having completed that sprint and delivered what was committed for that sprint by the team then meets, huddles together and does a retrospective. This retrospective is very, very important for teams' future progress, teams' improvement of teams' efficiency. So team has to do this, in which basically they list out that what was done well, what went well, and what could have been better. So that and then based on that introspection, team decides that what needs to be done in the next sprint so that their performance is improved. Scrum Master again facilitates this meeting. This meeting is a kind of a private meeting where team could also watch dirty linen, whatever hits and misses what they are doing that sprint. Somebody may have complained against another member. They could have collaborated better. Somebody was lacking something could have been done in a better way by some other member, and things like that. Also, all those things get discussed in this sprint review, and based on this learning, they decide how to do the next sprint. If you look back now and examine this whole thing, basically the whole process is nothing but a practice of Juran's PDCA cycle. PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, act. So the planning was done initially when we picked up the product backlog, and we worked out the sprint backlog. Do part was there during the sprint. We did every day daily Scrum was there, in which we reviewed day-to-day activity, day-to-day progress, and day-to-day problems were resolved there. And then now the check has been done, where we handed over the completed work to the product owner, made the delivery of the shippable product, and now the time comes for act. That before starting next sprint, we know that what is to be improved, and we act upon that for starting the next sprint. Now, how these sprints are measured, how the progress is monitored during this. So it's one of the activity for the Scrum Master is that he publishes the sprint Burndown chart. Now, this Burndown chart is actually a reverse of what otherwise we are familiar with in any of the project monitoring tracking tool. Here, the chart is actually tracks the remaining amount of work, not what has been done, but the remaining amount of work. So a sample I have put on the left-hand side in the slide. The straight line shows that if everything was done smoothly, if you look at it, there's about 90 hours. It starts at 90 on day 1 and goes down to 0 on day 10. So that means the sprint was for 10 days, there was 90 hours total effort required, and on an average every day they were supposed to be doing 10 hours job so that they could finish this in 10 days, less than 9 hours job actually. So the 9 hours job actually, so that they could finish in 10 days. But what happens actually that every day the task that was supposed to be for 9 hours doesn't get finished in 9 hours. So initially if you look at it, the red line shows the progress of the team. It shows that initially the team was doing much better, much faster, but after day 2 they ran into some problem, and then the day 3, day 4 progress was not that good. But eventually, so depending on whether the team is going faster or slower, this graph will go above or below that blue line, which is the standard line. So this is how the team tracks its progress. This chart shows them, keeps indicating that whether they are behind the schedule or ahead of the schedule. So, and this gives the idea that where the whole progress is going to be. Another thing related to this is the product or release burn down. So this sprint is fine, but whether we are going to meet the end goal of delivering the complete project, say 6 months down the line. So this is how that is also tracked from sprint to sprint. Now, if you look at it down the x-axis, it says iterations, which are basically sprints, and on the y-axis it shows total story points. Story points are actually, and I was talking about the estimation of the product backlog. Product backlog gets estimated again with using a rough scale of Fibonacci series, where one would say, okay, this story needs large effort, small effort, and things, or maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this kind of categorization. And each story is assigned a number depending upon the size and complexity of that story. And based on that, this is the total story points for the total complete project. So these 400 story points are being tracked on sprint basis. So total for each sprint, it shows the progress. Like it is right now, it is showing the progress of 7 sprints. So again, like in the previous graph, we were seeing the delivery or schedule meeting on day-to-day basis. Here it is watching the schedule being met on sprint-to-sprint basis. So this is how the progress is made, and sprint after sprint, the deliveries will be made, and finally this tracking is there. Because we did not have very rigid schedule, we know that the stories are estimated only in detail only when their commitment is there, and depending upon that, once the commitment has been done, team completes their commitment within the given time box. So at times they may have to put in extra effort, at times they may be able to do it easily. In case they are able to finish their sprint faster, they are free to take up more stories in consultation with the product owner, again on the same priority basis, and that's how the whole project progresses, and the visibility remains there, and depending upon that, the schedule is known, the predictability is there, whether the project is going to be completed in given time or not. So it takes away a lot of uncertainties that were there in the earlier techniques and methods used for the project management. This becomes much more flexible because it is driven by the team itself. So we know that we are sure that the team is going to deliver on such and such date or not, and things like that. So these are, and then actually in real life what happens that actually multiple teams work in parallel on different stories, and then they bring it together. So in that situation, what is known is we call it Scrum of Scrum is done in case, as we said, in case of a team, there is a daily stand-up. But in case of multiple teams, then each of the team's representative comes together and does the Scrum of the Scrum, because again, teams have to keep in sync with each other. So this is how the Scrum has been defined. This is how the deliveries are done in the Scrum, and it is still continuously being refined and for improvements. Larger teams are adopting Scrum due to inherent benefits. There are projects where thousands of people are working together in the same Scrum model, and mind you that the teams are not going to be, each team has to be around that 7, 8, 9 number, not large teams are working to it. This practice is also being followed across the geographies where the teams are distributed. There could be team members working from different locations, although that is not the ideal situation, because wherever they are, they have to get together daily for a Scrum. So it is generally recommended that the team should be co-located all the members are at the same location so that they can have a face-to-face meeting on day-to-day basis. But still the evaluation is going on. There are search for the new methods and techniques being done. As I said, the origin of the Scrum was not from the software itself, but it came from the manufacturing industry. And still new techniques are being looked and integrated with this. The examples are Kanban and Lean from manufacturing industry, which are getting now integrated with the Scrum methodology. And similarly, there are search for other excellence and perfection in this team. So that is going on. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'll quickly go through the questions. In case you have any question, please feel free to ask now. I'll answer all the questions one by one. So I have answered about the cost factor thing. There was a question about the cost, and I'm seeing that would the inexperienced or relatively newer resources be able to make the worthy decision around organizing themselves to meet delivery commitments? Yes, this is a very good question, because new members, I mean, you see, the whole concept of Scrum and the success of a Scrum depends upon the team spirit. And this team spirit has to be combined with the maturity of individuals, their knowing their strengths and weaknesses, and integrating the individuals' strengths and weaknesses for the team system. So the new members of the team definitely need to be inducted into the process very carefully. This task is again done by the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is supposed to take care of new members so that they get inducted in the team. And it is always recommended that new members should not be in majority in any of the team. We should always have new members associated with the old members in the team so that they have the initial handholding and they are able to do it better. Can the PO tell how a team member has to implement a task? No, not at all. PO can only tell that this is the story, this is the requirement, and the team has to decide, or a team member has to decide how it is to be implemented, how it is to be done. Product owner must refrain from interfering in teams' activities, teams plan, teams sprint plan, and things like that, sprint backlog and all. Will it be a better idea to go for Agile where whole team size is not more than 4 and having iterative build of system where project is a internal project example? As I said, actually Scrum can be implemented in any environment, any kind of work, any kind of team size, any kind of project. So in fact, you could implement a Scrum even if you are working alone on any of the projects. You can decide, because basically see, it facilitates your planning activity. It facilitates your visibility into the progress. It facilitates a lot of those things which are otherwise remain uncertain. So in case of 4 members internal project, I think that is ideal for implementing this. Next question is, do we use the incremental model of software engineering in this technology? See, I would not relate it with the incremental, because see, the teams are making commitment out of prioritized list of requirements, and product owner is presenting that. So product owner may have planned incremental releases actually, but the team is not to bother about that. Team is not concerned actually about that. Team only looks at the top requirement and see whether they can deliver this or not in the next sprint. So product owner may have that strategy of incremental releases to meet the end game, to make the final deliveries, but team will still be focused on the stories and the product backlog. Next question is, how does the PO figure out what will please the stakeholders? How do they help the stakeholders explore what they want in a product? Which do you prefer, interactive models or large surveys? Product owners actually, I briefly mentioned about it. Product owner is supposed to be in touch with all the stakeholders. He has to gather their views, opinions, or if possible the requirements from each of the stakeholders. And actually, your doubt is right. I mean, there will be situations where actually the stakeholders would not be so much knowledgeable about the product itself. They may have some vague requirement, and that's why I mentioned that product owner comes with a vision. That vision is that something that, okay, we need something like this. Now, what that something like this needs, what kind of technology is required, what kind of stories need to be spelled out for that. That is the work of the product owner. So product owner can take all inputs. It is like in a conventional situation, it is going back to the customer and time and again getting things clarified whenever you run into doubt that, okay, what exactly the customer wants. So product owner has to find ways and means to expedite that so that he has that quickly, he has that product backlog ready with him. And for that purpose, ideally, product owner should be coming up with the possible alternatives to the stakeholder that, okay, you said this, now here's the 3 or 4 ways that this could be there. We want flavor A or B or C. So that the stakeholders are able to quickly make up their mind and decide, and then the product owner can make progress on that. Question is that, next question is, Scrum recommend the team size of 6 to 9. Is Scrum recommend for the big projects that need more than, say, for example, 30 people? I mentioned that actually there are Scrum being practiced in projects where thousands of people are involved, but the team size, ideal team size remains 6 to 9. There's no restriction on number of teams working on any project. There could be, the number could be as large as anything. But that, because you see that we want to have that team spirit of the team protected, because based on that the whole success depends. So that team cannot be allowed to be too big. So please restrict the team size to not more than 9 people. Can you please, next question is, can you please elaborate team members can switch roles? Oh yeah. Say for example, take a simple situation of a software project where there's a developer and there's a tester. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, in a Scrum team, people do not get identified by their role. You cannot say that in this team this was so and so is a tester and so is a developer, because this is a joint effort. It is a joint commitment. So at times it is quite possible that the developer is doing the testing, or it is possible that the tester is doing some of the developer's role. Say for example, if the tester has the knowledge, he could be writing or executing unit tests on the code written by the developer. And similarly, developer could be doing the functional testing on behalf of the tester. So they can always switch the role. The next question is that I wonder how a product developer who is skilled at low-level programming can involve in high-level activities like product designing. Not necessary. When we ask, I am saying that they can exchange the role. It is not necessary that he has to take up everybody else's role. Whatever is comfortable, whatever he can. See, the idea is basically that a team of 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever number of people is there, everybody is trying to chip in the best possible effort that he or she can do, so that the whole team gets the best effort put in by the team as a combined entity and deliver the best possible. Next question is product owner part of management team? Can we say Scrum Master is like a line manager? I explained about the line manager. Product owner could be part of the management, but Scrum Master also could be part of the management, but when he's playing the role of a Scrum Master, he is not a manager. Please keep it in mind, clear, very clear. He is not a manager. He doesn't have authority over the team. He cannot direct the team. He cannot allocate tasks to the team. He is just there to help the team. He is watching, providing his inputs, his guidance, his whatever knowledge he has. But it is entirely up to team to accept that or reject that. Next question is, in the scenario of software industry, as an example, who can be Scrum Master? You said that it can't be. No, anybody can be Scrum Master. Scrum Master doesn't mean that a Scrum Master has to have the knowledge of that technology or that product or those practices. No, nothing like that. The Scrum Master, not necessarily that a Scrum Master has to be a manager and a Scrum Master has to be a senior person. A junior person could also be a Scrum Master. But the whole idea is basically that the Scrum Master should be very well aware of his role. He should be fulfilling his responsibility towards the team. Anybody could play that role. He could be this, a developer could be a Scrum Master, a tester could be a Scrum Master, a XYZ, anybody in the team could be the Scrum Master. Can product owner and Scrum Master roles be carried out by one person? This is a difficult question because the person, when he is playing one or the other role, he cannot mix up the two things. He cannot mix up. So if somebody is capable of keeping those two roles and responsibilities separate, isolated from each other, yes, he can play the role. But ideally, he should not be, because generally there will be conflict of interest. Next question is, what kind of skill set is a Scrum Master expected to have? Is it soft skills and leadership skills only, or technical skills are required too? Nothing is a must, I would say. If he has technical skills, he is welcome. He can always provide his guidance to the team. He definitely should be good in soft skills, because he has to keep an eye on each of the members in the team and ensure that he or she is able to contribute the maximum. And that is where that word was used in the Scrum Master role as shepherding. He has to shepherd the team. He has to ensure that team gels with very well. He has to ensure that nobody in the team gets isolated. He has to ensure that each and every member within the team is contributing the maximum. He has to ensure that the team acts as a single entity. He has to ensure that the cohesiveness is there in the team. Okay. Technical skill, if he has, well and good, but the role doesn't really call for any technical skill. Next is, does that mean that there will be more than one Scrum Master in the project? There could be many Scrum Masters in a project. There could be, depending on number of teams, there could be as many Scrum Masters as the teams are there. But as the number of teams increases, we have to ensure that the Scrum of a Scrum is conducted on daily basis in a most efficient manner, because that is the key of success for multiple teams. As within the team, each member has to keep other members in sync. Similarly, in number of teams, each team has to keep in sync with other teams. That is very much essential. Next question is, for typical web application project, what level of documentation should be prepared in terms of technical architecture, ERD, UML, etc.? Very good question. I'll take you back to the slide where I was showing you the Agile Manifesto, and there it clearly said that the emphasis is on delivering working software, not on the artifacts, not on the process, not on the ways and means. What counts is the end result, what is getting delivered. So the question comes, how much documentation? How much documentation gets decided by the organizational processes, organization systems, and organization's requirement. Say, for example, if there is a team which is going to be there working on a big project for a number of months, there are chances that some people may leave in between, new people will be required to be inducted. And at that point of time, if you do not have any documentation, it becomes very difficult to induct new members in the team, because who will educate them? So it is entirely up to the organization to decide that what kind of documentation is required, and therefore specified to each Scrum team that they should maintain at least that much of minimum documentation. But the essence of the Scrum remains that the documentation we should not be spending too much of time and effort on documentation, because that is not what we are trying to deliver. We are trying to deliver the shippable product. So the emphasis should be that maximum time and effort is spent on delivery, on achieving that. Next question is, while deciding a sprint and estimates, we need to take care of a scope and it requires time, then how we can say that a sprint cycle time boundless? A sprint cycle time is not boundless. A sprint cycle is sprint is very much fixed, and the number of the sprints are defined because of the release cycle. Release has been defined. Number of releases have been defined. Now, one thing that I missed to mention was that in deciding that, actually that team's velocity comes in the picture. Velocity is basically how many story points the team can deliver in each of the sprints. So if you recall, I mentioned that there will be numbers assigned to each story, which will be called the story points, and which will be comparative to each other's stories. Some stories seems to be smaller, it could have smaller number, other stories bigger, larger number. eventually it averages out. So in first, second sprint it may vary, but eventually it averages out to a number that, okay, each sprint the team is able to deliver so many story points. And depending on that number of story points, that is the velocity of the team, and depending on that velocity, the product owner is able to decide that, okay, how many sprints it is going to take eventually to deliver the whole product. So it is not unlimited, and it is very much planned, and that planning is done based on this velocity, and therefore there should not be any confusion about that what could be the end time. It is possible that the team's velocity is very slow and that it cannot deliver the whole product within the given time frame. So in that case, another team needs to be inducted in the project. Okay. Can you please elaborate? Team members can switch role. I have already answered that. So I think I have answered most of the questions. Is there any other question? Okay. I see another new question. How risk management is taken care in Scrum? Risk management is actually, you see, risk is being covered from sprint to sprint, because each sprint, actually, if you look at it, each sprint is a complete project in itself. So in each sprint, the team is making a commitment in delivering. So if those bits are and pieces are getting delivered on the schedule with that punctuality, with that as per the decided schedule, the risk naturally gets taken care of. The other risk that remains is of the members getting leaving the team and things like that. So that one has to, that the Scrum Master has to ensure that new members get inducted in the team very quickly and they gel with the team. So risk actually, as the size gets reduced, risk also gets minimized in the sprints, and therefore it gets taken care of very well. So I think that's it. I have come to the end of the question that I see listed here, unless somebody has another question.
We have a few more questions which I shared with you.
Okay, now I'm seeing that. No, this is only one question I am seeing. You may be covering this in your session, but how is cost factor since in the previous slide, I think I mentioned about this in between also, that
we have one question from Ishan.
Cost factor is basically taken care by that.
Yep, go ahead, sir. We have one question from Ishan. It says, please repeat the product release Burndown slide, as I mean, he was unable to hear it because of there was a voice distortion.
Okay. I'll come to that. Let me answer this cost, or I can combine both of them. Let me get to that slide also. See what is happening, that product owner has defined the release plan. Release plan, as I mentioned, he defines the release plan or modifies that release plan, which initially defines based on the velocity of the teams. Let us take a simple example of a single team working and the release is planned accordingly. So now what happens, that the release plan could be defined for a single team on a sprint to sprint basis, or could be defined on, say, for example, every 3 sprints we'll have this much, every 4 sprints we have this much delivered. So in this product release Burndown, the progress is being tracked for each of the sprints. So within a sprint, how many story points got delivered. So the project here, as I was mentioning, that on the x-axis, we have listed the iterations. There are 1 to 14 iterations. That means basically 14 sprints were there. And on the left-hand side, on the y-axis, we have story points. So total project has 400 story points. Now, these 400 story points are basically the points assigned to each and every story individually is sum total of that. So some stories could be just 1 point, other could be of 5 points, some other story could be 7 points. So eventually that all will sum up, it comes to 400 story points. Now if you look at it, on sprint 4, end of the sprint 4, we are seeing that the graph has come down to 300. That means in first 4 sprints, the team has delivered 100 story points they had delivered. So that is giving us the velocity of the team. In 4 sprints, 100 points means each sprint on an average, they will be delivering 25 story points each sprint. So if there are 14 sprints and we are expecting 25 story points from each of them, if we calculate simply, it will become 25 into 14, that means 25 into 400, and 25 into 125, 10. 350 story points will get delivered by sprint 14, if you go by that average. So either the team has to stretch itself to deliver more story points to bring that average up so that they are able to deliver all those required 400 story points in 14 sprints, and if it is not possible, then new team will have to be inducted in the project, because this one team will not be able to. So actually we can have a story burndown, like we had in the previous slide, this standard burndown straight line. We can also have a straight line here which will take this 400 to 14, and that will show the average per sprint the story points required to be delivered. And against that we can track that whether the progress of the releases are perfect or not. Now, because this release, now we have decided that these are the 14 sprints, this is the team size, this is the total effort going into it. So we are actually indirectly defining that, okay, this is the total cost that we are going to incur on this. And that cost is getting tracked from sprint to sprint. So we know that we are, in between any time during the project, we can say that whether we are within the budget or beyond that budget. So that cost is also getting tracked automatically. Yes, please. Next question.
So what is the role of project manager and the project lead in Agile and Scrum methodologies?
First of all, if you look at it, there is no project manager. There is no project manager required for the Scrum as such. Organizations may still have project manager who could keep an eye on the progress of these teams, which basically the product owner is supposed to be keeping for each of the releases. But then there is no project manager as such. There is no manager as such actually in the whole concept, whole philosophy.
This is from Norman George. Tasks in the sprint backlog emerge as the sprint evolves. Wouldn't this affect the sprint end date?
See, the sprint backlog is affected from sprint to sprint, but the product backlog remains the same. So the product backlog is there, and product backlog is already what should I say? Product backlog has already been measured in terms of the story points, and the team is also trying to deliver certain story points per sprint. So now it is quite possible that in some of the sprints they may have to stretch themselves, whereas in other sprints they will be very relaxed. So depending on that flexibility, they can always take up additional story or drop a story for the next sprint. So that little bit of give and take is there, but because it is getting monitored from sprint to sprint, the end result is not very huge as compared to the conventional method where, say, suppose 6 month long project is there, and in the 5th month you get to know that no, we are going to be off by a couple of months time. Here we are checking it on 2 weeks or 4 week basis. So at the most it could go off the record, off the schedule by a week or 2, or at the most by a sprint. So if you see the entire outer, say for example, we were seeing that example of 14 sprints, it could be, there may be at the end of it one more sprint required.
From
so the schedule and the predictability of the delivery is much better in the case of the Scrum methodology.
From Sachin, if there is a change in requirement in between, so how does Scrum handle the situation?
A change of requirement in between is very well handled in Scrum, because you see the team has, every time the team is being presented a new prioritized list, because the say first sprint is over, they delivered some stories, some shippable unit they have delivered. Now the product owner in the next sprint again may reorganize those remaining requirements and come up with a new list. So at any given point of time, team is not bothered by the remaining stories there. So remaining stories could change anyway. Team is only looking at those stories where they have committed. So the commitment by commitment they are going to deliver. Product owner has the responsibility to see to it that his total release plan fits into the time frame, that total time frame that he has available to him.
We are taking our last two questions. This one is from Loki Maineni. Now, how does it work out for a fixed bid of projects? I mean, if there is the cost is already fixed.
Yeah, fixed bid project, you see, I mean, what is different in fixed bid project? Here I am talking about a release plan, a total time frame, and depending upon that total time frame, number of sprints that are available to the team. In fixed bid project, the same thing is represented in a different manner where you say that, okay, this is the team size, this is the length of the time available to you, isn't it? So if you look at it, fixed bid project can be better managed through Scrum because you have, again, you already defined that, okay, this is the total work to be done. You divide it into tasks and divide it into individual sprints, and sprint by sprint you monitor that. So it doesn't really matter whether it is a fixed bid project or any other project, because the product owner has to keep in mind the last delivery date, the end date of it, and depending upon that, the product owner has to make his release plan, and he has to track that release plan with the team's progress. If team cannot deliver more than 20 story points each sprint, and the requirement is of delivering at least 30 story points, then there has to be an additional team added to that. Additional effort has to be right, because the team's optimum velocity will be something, and Scrum Master will always be encouraging team to do better, but then there's a limit to how much they can stretch.
Sunil Kumar, while checking the product or sprint backlog, is there any baseline plan for the same sprint the product owner has in mind to compare?
Product owner doesn't have any plan or any baseline. Product owner only has a release plan, and that release plan also, as I said, gets modified once the sprints start and once the velocity of the different teams is established. So the release plan may have to be adjusted as per that. So because product owner first of all doesn't know whether the team is going to commit 2 stories, 3 stories, 5 stories to start with. The product owner only gets that idea after at least couple of sprints that, okay, the team is committing roughly so many story points. And it is quite possible that in some sprint they are only doing 1 story, which is very large, and in the other sprint they are doing number of stories which are very, very small. So there's nothing like a product owner having a baseline or something like that. Product owner has to wait and watch and see that what is the velocity that the team is able to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Rawat, for that highly informative and insightful session. Thank you to our participants for their support in making these series a great success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgeek.com tomorrow, along with your queries answered. Our next webinar is a workshop on social media tools on brand building and will be held tomorrow, August 10 at 3 p.m. Co-founder and CEO of Digital Vidya, Mr. Pradeep Chopra, will be conducting the session. Digital Vidya is India's premier digital marketing training company and the first to launch social media marketing workshop series in India. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much.